power. Absolute power. It's something that we all in some way, shape, or form kind of lust after in a way. And if you don't think that you're concerned about power, I invite you to think back on a time when the electricity went out in your house. It's always funny to me when that happens because we have kids scattered about the house and they'll be watching TV or playing games or doing something, and then all of a sudden the lights go down and you hear this sort of muffled cry for help from one place, and then, "What happened? I was in the middle of a game." And so it shows us the need for power in some way, shape, or form, but that's not the only power in the world, is there? No, see, we human beings, we also have power, and we tend to gravitate towards things with more power. In fact, when we look at the election cycles and we look at how we elect leaders, we always try to choose powerful persons, don't we? People with a sort of commanding presence. It always is this big important thing of how many people come to rallies for political leaders, how they talk, how they act, because if they have this air of power, then naturally people will gravitate towards them. And it's kind of hard for us to understand, in a sense, the notion of kingly leadership. Being who we are and being where we are, that's not how we look at leaders. A king was given divine right to rule. That was the idea. There was no democratic process. There was no way for people to kick a king out if they didn't like them unless there was a bloody insurrection. And yet for us, we know that the power in the land truly is derived from the people. That if we don't like someone politically or what they're doing, then we can vote them out. That is the system of government that we have in place. And so this idea of a king sometimes can seem rather foreign to us because we're not under a king. But then we have to stop and think, okay, if that's the case, then what exactly makes a king a king? And I'm saying king, but really this goes for all monarchs as well. I don't want to discount queens as well, but the idea of a monarchy is this family was given a divine right to rule. And so naturally, when we think of kings and we think of medieval literature and fantasy literature, what we have are these very powerful sort of kings. Great, strong warriors. And if the king is not a great, strong warrior, if they are ineffective, if they are small, they are seen as lesser of a king. Because we need power. And we gravitate towards power. And a king's role was to care for the people and to care for the land and to do all of these things. And if that person is not this powerful sort of figure, this built-up, larger-than-life mythic hero, then how exactly were they able to take care of anybody? The short answer is they weren't. And so all of this plays into the expectations of what a king is and what a king does. And this isn't something just for us in modern times. This is something that dates back many thousands of years ago. In fact, one of the things that the people of Israel said, they went to Samuel and they said, "We want a king. We want someone to govern us. We want someone to rule us." And they were looking for a strong human representation of what God was already doing. And that's what they got. And so along comes this time where Saul was sort of chosen to be the first monarch, and then Saul fell out of favor with the Lord. And then along comes a handsome shepherd boy named David, who takes the spotlight and becomes like the best king ever. David becomes the standard by which all other monarchs are measured. So much so, when you're reading the historical books in the Bible, and this is true, if you find the phrase, "they were a king like King David," this was high and lofty praise. And if the author wanted to convey that the king was a terrible king and a really bad ruler, they would use the phrase, "this was a king that was nothing like King David." in a way that there was this sort of moment where you could say, oh, they were not a good ruler, or oh, they were a great ruler. And so King David is this benchmark, the best of the best of the best of the best. And we know that he has power and might because he defeated the 9-foot-tall giant Goliath. And he rules with wisdom and some bad things, and yet he is still looked at as the best king. So when we look at our reading in Jeremiah, we see cries for justice in the midst of the exile. We see that all of these powers that were oppressing the people will be dealt with. And that's what power can do, isn't it? Power has the chance to met out justice when we think people get exactly what they deserve. Those in power create laws and create systems we think that are supposed to help people. And everything's supposed to be great because justice has been done. And that is what the beginning of this passage is saying. After this exile, after this time of trial, woe to those who have hurt my people. Woe to those who have scattered my flock, because I'm coming back down there, God says, and I'm going to take care of all of it, and I'll gather up my people. And it's this rallying cry. It's this idea that God's going to come and God's going to take care of stuff. And to drive the point home, we read about the Davidic covenant. You see, a long time ago when David was king, God made a promise to David and said, your family is always going to be in power and is always going to rule. And so the idea was this family, this divinely chosen family, was always going to be the ruler of the people of God. And it's great because David certainly met that expectation and exceeded that expectation in some ways. But what does that mean to a people in exile? The days are surely coming, says the Lord, when I will raise up for David a righteous branch, and he shall reign as king and deal wisely and shall execute justice and righteousness in the land. You see, God's like, I didn't forget about the promise I made to David. Quite from the opposite. I am going to continue to use David's family, the one that you guys are all frothing over the mouth for, this amazing, awesome king, this strong, powerful leader. I'm going to still use that family, God says, and this branch from the root of David will come up and honor the people and honor the covenant that I have made with David, and will rule with justice and might and power, and he shall be called the Messiah. He will be the Lord is our righteousness, and he will take care and call my people to him and met out justice and met out righteousness. And so all of the people, they read this and they're like, yay! The Messiah is going to be wonderful. This is surely something we can wait for because of this strong, powerful, charismatic figure that's going to be coming. Now, and then as time progresses, we read that certainly the Jewish people, they do come back from exile and they rebuild the temple. And then our Bible has a little bit of a stopgap. You know, we don't talk about the Maccabees and everything that happened with them, and that leads to Hanukkah and this powerful family of the Maccabees. And when the New Testament picks up, we pick up with the story of Jesus. The story of a little baby boy who was born, the humble son of a carpenter. And yet at the birth of this child, the angels sing, and he is proclaimed to be the divine, righteous Son of God, the Messiah, the one that everyone was waiting for, the branch of David. Naturally, this would be good news to the people, because the people now are living in a land where the Romans are occupying them, and they think, awesome, Messiah's here. They're going to get rid of the Romans, and we're going to have our own kingdom, and everything is going to be great. He's going to come in on this big, beautiful white horse, swinging a sword, chasing the Romans out, and everything will be fine, because this Messiah surely will have power. And yet that's not what they got. Instead, the Messiah that they got was not thinking just in a small way, but in a much larger way. You see, this Messiah, this Jesus figure comes, and he even tells them plainly, hey guys, listen, I'm not here so that y'all can serve me. I'm here to serve all y'all. That's a southern paraphrase. That's the gist of it, though. I did not come to be served, but to serve. And so Jesus, as this leader, as this Messiah, comes and serves people and takes care of people and offers forgiveness and righteousness from God. This Messiah comes to those who truly are lost and truly are scattered, and talks to the outsiders and talks to the prostitutes and the tax collectors and the lepers and those that society has cast off. And this rubs the religious elite really the wrong way, because they're like, surely if you're the Messiah, if you are the long-awaited king that we have been waiting for, surely, they said, you should look at us, because we've been here doing everything this book says we're supposed to be doing. And he tells them, look, you guys are healthy. You know what you're supposed to be doing. I'm a doctor. I came for the sick. And that rubs people the wrong way. And because Jesus does not meet the expectations of the people, we know exactly what happens to Jesus. Jesus is put to death. Our gospel reading deals with that. The Gospel of Luke deals with this. They go to Golgotha, the place of the skull, an ominous-sounding name, a hill that is used for the crucifixion of the worst of the worst of the worst. And crucifixion is a terrible way to be put to death. And they stretch Jesus out after having him carry his own cross. They stretch out his hands, and they drive large spikes through his wrist, and they've mocked him, and they've beat him, and the crown that this king has is one of thorns, and he's bleeding, and he's bruised, and he's bloodied, and it's this horrible-looking image. But it doesn't just stop there, because the people know that this is the supposed king of the Jews. This is the supposed Messiah, and they start to mock him. Well, if you are who you say you are, hop on off the cross and save yourself. And the criminals beside him are like, you could save us. And they put this sign above him that says, here's the King of the Jews, which was a really smart political tool by the Romans, but it was also this sort of mocking, chiding thing at Jesus and the followers of Jesus. Because they look at this and they say, here is your king. This is the long-awaited Messiah, the King of the Jews. And it doesn't look anything like a king, because that's not what kings get. You see, kings are full of power and full of majesty, and that's what a king is. And here is this broken down, beaten carpenter's son, struggling for breath as he lay hanging crucified on one of the most horrific devices ever conceived by human beings. The Romans are asking the Jewish people, is this your guy? This your king? This guy that we just beat? Where's the power? Where's the majesty? This dude isn't saving anybody, they say. This is your king. This is the one y'all put all your hopes and dreams. Y'all carried that around with you. And this is the guy. This is the might and the power of the Roman government. That we can take your supposed best of the best. We can take the one from the line of David, this great king, and we can do this to him. And if you don't toe the line, this is what we'll do to you as well. Abject humiliation, abject scorn and mocking. This was what Jesus had. There is no power in the cross. And surely the guards know it, the criminal knows it, because they're mocking Jesus still. Where's your power? If you are who you say you are, prove it. Put your money where your mouth is. And they don't realize that Jesus had already done that. Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. And therein lies the true power of Jesus Christ. See, when you read the Gospels, you don't read that Jesus comes in as this macho man's man with a sword and a tattoo running down his leg, kicking the Romans' butts and getting them out of Jerusalem. You read that he's a humble, down-to-earth, real, authentic person who deeply cares about the people that he has come for. So much so that while he has been beaten and mocked and knows that he is going to die soon, one of the final things he says is, "Father, forgive them, because they don't get it." And that is the power of Christ, because that is the power of love. One of the criminals who's mocking him keeps going on and chiding and poking, and finally the other guy, he just has had enough of it. He says, "Shut up. We're getting what we deserve. Like, we did bad things," he says. "We are getting what we deserved. We had a fair trial, and they found us guilty based on the evidence, and we both know we did it," he says. "But this guy right here, what has he done wrong? What exactly has this Jesus done wrong? He said he loved people. He said he cared for people. He said he was going to heal people and draw them closer to God. And he did everything he said he was going to do. And this is the reward that he gets for all of his hard work. He didn't do anything wrong. We're getting the justice we deserve." And he says this is a gross mischaracterization of what justice is. It's a perversion. And then he looks at Jesus. "Remember me. When you come into your kingdom, Jesus, please remember me." See, this guy who knows that he's guilty, this guy who knows that he has done wrong, knows that Jesus Christ is something special. And he says, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." It's not if you come into your kingdom, it's when. See, what this criminal is doing in a sort of roundabout way is professing this faith in Jesus Christ, that yes, this is my king. He is taking a stand as he is dying next to Jesus. He says, "This is my king." And he says, when you come into your kingdom, everything that you said, he says, in this one line, everything that you've said is true. And so when you go into your kingdom, he says, please remember me. And he professes this deep faith, this deep longing to be accepted and to be loved by Jesus. And so Jesus does what Jesus always does, and is the king, not that the people think that they want, but the king that the people needs. And he says, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. I will remember you, Jesus says. And not only that, you will be with me. This is the reality of why Jesus came, of how Jesus is a king, versus the expectation of what everyone else put on Jesus. I would absolutely love to say that we don't have that problem anymore. That we have the scripture and we have all of these great books and all of this doctrine, and we have our book of confessions and the PCUSA, and that we get it right 100% of the time. But come on, we know that's not the case. There's all these different versions of Jesus's running around that we have in our minds. We've got strong Jesus, we've got lovey hippie Jesus, we've got kind Jesus, We've got mean Jesus. We've got vengeful Jesus. We have this Jesus and that Jesus to fulfill whatever need it is that we have. And that's not Jesus. It's just not. The Jesus that is authentic, this real core Jesus, the one that we should be following, the one that we should be striving for when we push away all of the propaganda and the muck and the mire in the world, when we look at the Scripture and we see what Jesus does and how Jesus acts. That is the real, authentic Jesus. And that there, my brothers and sisters, is your King. The humble one. The one with power and might that everyone counted for nothing. The one who used the power responsibly and not for himself, not for his own glory, but to save people. The perfect, idealized king. The one who goes far beyond King David. The one who is the perfect human being, the perfect person. The one who is the one who loves us and who saves us. I don't know if any politician today would jump in front of a bullet for me. I don't know. I don't know any politician well enough to say, oh yeah, they'd take a bullet for me. Chances are my gut would say, no, they would probably not. They may send, if I'm lucky, a Secret Service person or something, but chances are, the President of the United States, be that whoever it may be, won't necessarily jump in front of a bullet aimed directly at me. Jesus did, though. Jesus bore the punishment for my sins. Jesus Christ was the one who said, I love you. I care for you. And I am going to take care of you, even if it costs me my life. So I don't necessarily get what all a king is. I watch British TV shows sometimes, and I pay attention to what's going on in the monarchy because it's like an over-the-seas soap opera sometimes. But I don't know what a king is. But I know what Jesus is. And I know who Jesus is. And if I have to say what is a king supposed to be, I'm going to do the thing I always do and point to that humble carpenter's son who cares about me. And I would hope and pray, my brothers and sisters, that you all would too, because that is true power. Amen.